All right, welcome in everyone. Tony Patelis, your host of the College Hoop News Podcast. We have a special mailbag edition today. We're going to try something new. We asked questions on Twitter, and we're going to answer them today. So we'll probably be doing that throughout the season as well. Kevin Sweeney from CVBCentral.com is joining me. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing great, Tony. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. This is Kevin's, I think, second spot on the podcast. He helped us out with the ACC preview, which did really well. So we'll get started right away, Kevin. A couple of questions I wanted to ask you before we get started on the mailbag questions. Are you ready for real games? Because if I have to hear any more about any scrimmages, I might jump off a cliff.
Oh my God, am I ever? I'm pretty sure the Siena Forum's already started trying to fire Jimmy Patsos because they lost to a D2 team in a scrimmage by 2 points. I'm Marquette people are panicking that they won by 2. Like, everybody's panicking about something, and I'd love to watch some college basketball on Friday night, and I can't wait.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you something else, because what do you think about these suspensions during exhibition games for players? I mean, how big of a cop-out is that when it comes down to an actual suspension?
It's Coach K's oldest trick in the book. He does it every year. He always has someone suspended for an exhibition game. I'm sure Trayvon Duval is completely heartbroken that he has to miss their game against Bowie State.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's absolutely torn apart about that.
I just don't understand it. I mean, I don't even consider that a punishment. Do you?
Nope, not at all.
Yep, not at all.
But Coach K has to keep his appearance that he is some sort of a hard rule follower and gonna do things the right way. So here we are.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get into these questions. We got some pretty good ones. First one is from @MikeGrib8. He wants us to pick our first and second team all defense for this season, preseason. So why don't you go ahead and why don't you share your first team first?
Let me just pull that up here in my notes. So I just grabbed 4 guards and 6 forwards for this one. So guard-wise, I have Javon Carter. I think he's pretty much the most obvious candidate out there. Just an absolutely elite on-ball defender at West Virginia. Ahmad Thomas at UNC Asheville. Ahab Amin at Texas A&M Corpus Christi had like 3.5 steals a game last year. Absolutely ridiculous. And then I think Barry Brown's a really underrated defender as well at Kansas State. And then forwards, Ben Lammersh blocks a ton of shots at Georgia Tech. Same with Reggie Lynch. Taco Fall, I think, definitely deserves consideration given how much value he provides at the defensive end. Isaiah Wilkins at Virginia. I think he's kind of like a glue guy, does so many different things for them defensively. And then Robert Williams, and then a little bit of a mid-major guy, Isaiah Brock at Oakland. I think he does so many different things for that ball club defensively. So that would be my 10 guys for all defense first and second team.
Yeah, I kind of went the same route. It's kind of tough to do position-wise because there's so many players. But my first guy at the top spot was Reggie Lynch. Obviously, he's a huge rim protector for Minnesota. Averaged, I think, almost 3.5 blocks per game last year. So I think he needs to be in the mix. At the guard spot, obviously, Javon Carter is probably the best defender in the country. If you had to ask me right now. Devontae Graham is another guy who doesn't get enough credit, I don't think, on the defensive end. One of the great stories about him, I remember when he completely shut down Buddy Hield a few years ago, and that's when I really took notice of how good of a defender he is. And you'll be happy about this. I think Vic Law is one of the better defenders in college basketball.
Yeah, I thought about putting him on there as well.
Yeah. So I added him to my first team. Also, Theo Pinson is somebody that, just does everything for North Carolina, and he's great on the defensive end. He can guard multiple spots. So that would be my first team. And my second team, I think Dakota Mathias is a kid that won Big Ten defensive player of the year last year. He doesn't get enough credit, I don't think, even though he won I don't think people look at him that way. Kyrie Thomas from Creighton is a kid that's really, really good on the defensive end. Michael Bridges from Villanova is another kid who can also guard multiple spots, really long, really good perimeter defender. And DeAnthony Melton from USC is another kid, same type of, spot where he can guard multiple spots, really versatile. And then Taco Fall too. I mean, the kid's 8 feet tall, and he just disrupts so many things on the defensive end. So that's my 10. There's so many guys we could pick from, but I locked down on those 10. So I think those are 2 pretty solid teams.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so the next question, this is pretty much a guess, but will Brad from Field of Freak 68, will Brad Underwood be swept in the NCAA investigation? In my opinion, there's obviously a chance. I mean, he was at Oklahoma State with Lamont Evans. Lamont Evans was obviously arrested for what was going on, so I'm just saying, yeah, probably. I mean, it could happen for sure. We just don't know enough information yet.
Yeah, kind of going along with what you're saying right there, Tony. I mean, I don't think we can rule out. I don't think he's going to be someone we're looking at losing his job over this type of thing. I don't think what we've been hearing out of that situation is that severe that we'd be talking about that. But I'm sure there will be discussions about it, just simply because, I mean, when one of your assistant coaches is arrested for, in this situation, they're going to look into it. And so I think, yeah, he'll probably get looked into by the NCAA.
Absolutely. But again, I just don't think there's enough information to go on right now to, firmly say that will happen. Next question. You can take this one first, Kevin, from at TAZUST. Can Oregon win the Pac-12, and who do you think their leading scorer will be?
I don't think Oregon can win the Pac-12. I mean, I think they have a bunch of really nice pieces, but I think Arizona has a significantly better roster. I think USC has a significantly better roster. I think UCLA has significantly more talent, though they're pretty young. Leading scorer-wise, I mean, Elijah Brown's probably – it's going to depend on volume, but Elijah Brown will score at volume if he gets those shots. Troy Brown's another guy, a freshman, who I think will be in the mix for that. Kind of a sleeper. I think Peyton Pritchard is going to score a lot. I think people have kind of forgotten about him this summer. But he was a guy who really impressed me a lot of times last year, and then played with USA Basketball this summer at the FIBA U19 World Championships. And John Calipari was very pleased with how Peyton Pritchard played. So I think probably I'll go with Elijah Brown, but I don't think he'll be nearly their most valuable player.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's probably going to be Elijah Brown or Troy Brown, one of the Brown guards. I would probably go with Elijah because obviously he's a grad transfer, a lot of experience. So I'd probably go with that over the freshman. But I don't think they can win the league either. I hate to put ceilings on teams, but I'd probably say their ceiling is probably third place. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I mean, I do like what Dana Altman's done. I'm not going to bet against him because he's a really good coach on the court, at least. And so I don't necessarily know that I don't think they have the roster to be a true title contender in the Pac-12. They just I don't think you can put Elijah Brown, Troy Brown, Peyton Pritchard, Mikhail McIntosh, and Paul White on the floor and try to face them up against DeAndre Ayton, Raleigh Alkins, Alonzo Trier, Parker Jackson Cartwright. I mean, it's just they just don't balance up unless obviously things go crazy with the NCAA investigation with Arizona and USC.
That was a point I was going to make. If Arizona and USC are eligible, everybody's healthy, then I don't think Oregon can hang with either of those two teams. I mean, I have all the faith in Dana, all the faith in the world in Dana Altman, but I just don't think they have the pieces this year to be a Pac-12 championship team. I definitely still think they're an NCAA tournament team, probably a top 4 team in conference, but I just don't know if they have enough to compete with those teams like USC and Arizona. So I think we pretty much agree on Oregon. All right, here's another interesting question. What are your top 4 games opening week? This is also from Field of Freak.
So I highlighted 4, all of them on Friday night, actually, and that would be Iona at Albany on Friday night. I think that's an awesome game. Albany, I think, is a team kind of getting overlooked a little bit, given how good Vermont is. Everyone's assuming Vermont's going to cakewalk through the league, and they may win the league, but Albany's got 2 really, really good guards in David Nichols and Joe Cremo. They're solid up front, as they always are. Will Brown can really coach. He'll have his dudes ready to play. And they're at home. And then on Iona team, who everyone considers the favorite in the MAC, myself included, they've got – it is kind of a contrasting styles game as well, which is always fun to watch in terms of Iona being a team that likes to get up and down. They like to shoot a lot of threes. Albany's going to try to grind it out, make some plays at the end of the shot clock. So that's going to be a really fun one at Steph Curry Arena to start the year. Ball State at Dayton, probably not the best game in terms of teams, but I think it's a super interesting game in terms of seeing where Dayton is, seeing Ball State team who's potentially a contender in the MAC, single A MAC, of course. UNC Asheville at Rhode Island, a game that I think is getting overlooked a lot. UNC Asheville is probably a top 100 team in my book, a Big South title contender for sure, my favorite, taking on a Rhode Island team that's probably a top 50 team in college basketball, the A10 favorite. And then the last one I highlighted was Missouri State at Western Kentucky. That's a game I'm really looking forward to. Hopefully Alize Johnson is fully healthy. I know he's been dealing with a knee injury, but if he's ready to go, get to see this Western Kentucky team who has impressed in their 2 preseason games. I know we're trying not to like jump overreact on any of these things, but a team that has looked to the part so far. So that'll be a really fun one. I'm really looking forward to Friday night, getting everything going. I'll be at Northwestern versus Loyola Maryland. Not the best game, let's say, but it should be a fun one. Get college basketball back. Allstate Arena should be a pretty fun place to be Friday night with all the attention going back to Northwestern after their first NCAA tournament bid.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head. I had Iona Albany too for one of my mid-major games to watch. I think that's an excellent matchup. 2 of the better mid-major programs, not just teams, in college basketball. Will Brown does a tremendous job with Albany, and obviously Tim Clues is, probably one of the better mid-major coaches in all of college basketball. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. Another one that I was really looking forward to was West Virginia, Texas A&M. But now we have the suspensions going on with Texas A&M. So, and also Asa Ahmad is out, as we know, for West Virginia. So that game is one that I really wanted to watch, and it just kind of takes a hit now. I think Robert Williams will be out for that game.
I think Texas A&M's without 4 starters.
Right. Yeah.
I think
Caldwell.
Yeah, Caldwell's gone. Williams is gone. Hogue and Gilder, right?
Gilder. So, I mean, that just completely wipes that game out off the map. I think Minnesota and Providence is a very intriguing game. Two teams that are, in that 15 to 25 range in the top 25 that, they're both teams look like they're ready to, take a leap this year. Providence, one of the more experienced teams in college basketball. Minnesota pretty much returns all of their talent from last year. So that's a definitely interesting game we need to keep our eye on. Purdue Marquette is another one that I like a lot. I'm interested to see, who steps up for Marquette in that front court. It's going to be difficult, obviously, dealing with all the size that Purdue has. And then another game is Rhode Island and Nevada. Nevada is a team that really doesn't have a great non-conference schedule. So that's going to be a very important game for them because they're not going to have a lot of opportunities in the Mountain West for quality wins. So if they want to pick up a possible at-large, that's a very, very big game for them. So definitely keep your eye on that one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you have the Duke Michigan State matchup, Kansas Kentucky, those are your run-of-the-mill top 10 matchups that you always see in that first week. So definitely a lot of good games, but we'll keep our eye on all of them. All right.
Yeah, and I'll throw in one more Monday night as well. College of Charleston taking on Wichita State. I think that'll be a really, really fun one. College of Charleston brings back 5 starters from a team that went 25-10. They're going to win the CAA this year. They're going to be really dangerous. Wichita State, maybe without Landry Shamet, maybe without Marcus McDuffie. I think that's what's going to be happening.
I'm almost 100% confident that McDuffie won't be there. I think he's not going to be back till possibly December, but Shamet is a possibility from what I've heard. So regardless, it'll be a good matchup.
But that would be a really awesome opportunity for College of Charleston.
Absolutely. And they're a very, very good team in the class of the CAA. So next question is from Terry65. So he wants to talk about Alabama real quick, Kevin. What's the one thing that you want to see from Alabama versus Memphis? Obviously, first game of the year, it's kind of difficult, but I just want to see how they click on offense because that was their major issue last year. That's really the only, thing I could really think of. Obviously, I'd like to see Colin Sexton and John Petty and all those guys, but how are they clicking on the offensive end is the thing I want to see. What do you want to see from them?
Yeah, that was the main thing is for me as well, was just the offensive efficiency because I've been pretty bullish on Alabama all offseason as a team that I think could really surprise people just because you add a guy like Sexton, you add a guy like Herb Jones, you add a guy like John Petty, you're going to have a huge boost in your offensive output. And I think that was what held them back last year. I think Dante Hall is going to be really good. So that was the one thing I was going to focus on. The other thing I would say is just maybe just like that focus level. Obviously, this is a season that they're coming in hyped, a very high excitement about this Alabama team playing against the Memphis team that people aren't necessarily expecting to be very good. And then obviously they had the brief thing with the NCAA and the FBI investigation. So how do they come in? Do they play focused? Do they look like the team they were supposed to look like? Take care of business for a win over a Memphis team that is, I think, rebuilding this year. So that should be a fun one. Opening night, I believe, on a neutral court in Annapolis.
Yep.
Yeah.
And another thing with Alabama is that we're going to find out how good they are pretty quickly because their non-conference schedule is absolutely stacked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, they're playing top-notch mid-major teams. They're playing top-notch high-major teams. So it's a really good blend of competition. So we're going to find out pretty quickly how good this team is. So it should be exciting. All right, so next question for us is from Haslam Metrics. What team would you consider the best-kept secret? You know, a team that can finish top 15 that isn't being regarded as such right now. I'm pretty sure of your answer, but why don't you share it with our viewers, Kevin?
So my number one answer would be Virginia. If you watched our ACC preview podcast, I went on a pretty hot take saying that I thought Virginia could finish second in the ACC if things broke right. I'm going to stand by that projection. I think they have guys offensively. They have the pieces to be really good offensively comparative to what they've been in years past. Obviously, they don't have a proven guy like a Malcolm Brogdon or a London Parentes. But a guy like Ty Jerome, a guy like Kyle Guy, you bring in a guy like Nigel Johnson from Rutgers who can score the basketball. DeAndre Hunter is a guy I've heard a lot of rave reviews, and they're going to defend. You know there's a baseline there that they're going to defend, and they're going to be in every game because they're gonna keep the game in the 50s and 60s. And if they can just find a couple guys to get them buckets late in games, they're going to win a lot of basketball games this year. And so they would be my number one choice. Obviously, there's a few more I could think of, but I'll let you kind of say who you like first, and then we can kind of discuss that.
Yeah, the team that has been growing on me a little bit, and especially after we did the Big 12 podcast the other day, was Oklahoma. This is a team that returned 6 of their top 7 scorers. They add a 5-star point guard in Trae Young, who pretty much can do it all. They have like 8 guys on the roster that are 6'6" or bigger, so they're really versatile. They have a really deep bench this year. There's at least 8 or 9 guys that are going to see time. They have some really good, strong recruits coming in as well, along with Trae Young. Obviously, Lon Kruger is one of the best coaches in college basketball. This team was just super young last year. They're playing a lot of freshmen. So I think this year, with the experience they garnered last year, this is a pretty dangerous team, possibly. Obviously, they need to get better on defense. Perimeter shooting was a problem. A little bit concerned about point guard depth behind Trae Young, but all the pieces they have, I think this can be a top 4 or 5 team in the Big 12 and definitely an NCAA tournament team. What do you think about this Sooner team, Kevin?
I really like Oklahoma. Actually, I don't think they have any chance of winning any games. They lost a preseason exhibition game to UT Arlington, so they're obviously a terrible basketball team. We can take that away from one game, but actually in that game, I was a little concerned by their defense. They gave up over 100 points. Yeah. That's not something you want to see, especially with the team we were concerned about with them on the defensive end. But yeah, I do really like Oklahoma, especially if Doolittle comes back in December like he's supposed to and plays well. I really like his game, a very versatile piece. And as you mentioned, Trae Young, just a super exciting player to watch, can kind of create off the dribble, hits a lot of threes. So I'm excited to see this Oklahoma team play. I'll throw another. I mean, I was super high on Texas A&M as a team that could be a top 15 team, and I'm starting to hedge off of that just because. I mean, when you've had 4 starters suspended before the season even starts, you start to be like, what's going on here? But I'm a believer in the talent on that roster for sure.
Yeah. Another team that I was thinking about that I'm kind of coming around on is Michigan. Michigan's a team I really didn't like early preseason, but the more I look at this team, Mo Wagner could be an All-American type big, in my opinion. So John Beilein, you can never count out him because he's one of the best coaches in the game. And they bring in, Jerron Simmons, Ohio transfer. Also Charles Matthews is a really talented kid that just didn't figure it out at Kentucky. But if he does, the ability he has can really change that team. So I think Michigan is a team that I'm kind of coming around on. What do you think about the Wolverines?
I go back and forth on Michigan. I think they have the pieces to be pretty good. I like Jaron Simmons for sure. I'm not sure. I mean, he's replacing a guy in Derek Walton though, who was super special. And Simmons was playing in a high up tempo system where he was able to run and gun and shoot some threes and get to the rim and distribute the ball. So I'll be interested to see how he adjusts. I think he's really key to their success. And then obviously the consistency for Mo Wagner. I'm really excited about the middle of this Big Ten. Originally, I was looking at the Big Ten. And I was thinking maybe this league's a little weak this year. But the more I look at it, the more I sit there and I say, I like Maryland. I think Maryland's a good team. I think they're a top 25 team potentially by the end of the year if things break right. I think Iowa has the potential to be in the top 25. I mean, I'm not going to rule out Wisconsin. They've looked good in their preseason games. Obviously, we're not going to take too much away, but they have. It's not like they've come out and been bad so far. And we obviously trust that program to be good. I think Michigan's a pretty good team, and they could be in the mix as well. So I really like the middle of that conference. I mean, even Illinois and Indiana, I mean, they have really good coaches. I think they're a year away probably, but I think I'm not going to rule out those teams from even being NCAA tournament teams. So I really like the middle of this Big Ten now as I'm looking at it more and more every day.
Yeah, I would probably be pretty shocked if you don't see that conference grab 6 or 7 bids again this year. I think it's pretty strong, and maybe even more. Like you said, Illinois, and I would not be shocked if Illinois or Indiana overachieve, because I think both Archie Miller and Brad Underwood are that good and can fix things pretty quickly. So I would probably say right now 6 or 7 bids, but possibly more.
Yeah, I'd be around there as well, probably about that 7 range.
Yeah, for sure. We're going back to Oklahoma real quick. Where do you have them preseason in the Big 12? I was just curious.
I think I had them 5th. Just going through it, I know I have Kansas 1, West Virginia 2, TCU 3. Then the middle is where I kind of go, where I kind of start having some questions. Is it Texas, Oklahoma, Texas Tech? I think Baylor's a team. Baylor's a team a lot of people are high on as a top 25 team. That's not necessarily a team I'm seeing as a top 25 team. But I think they'll probably be that 5 or 6 spot for Oklahoma going in as a preseason spot.
Alrighty. All right. So let's move on here. So we have a question from Joe Ryan, 1621. What team do you think that has high expectations? He wants to know about Duke and Michigan State. Which team do you think could be a letdown possibly of those two? I think we both agree on this. You can go first.
Yeah. I'm on. I would say Duke here would be the team to let down. I mean, they just don't have a ton of depth, so that's a concern right off the bat. Trayvon Duval's their pretty much only point guard on the roster. You would be comfortable with playing the point unless we're going to see the Grayson Allen experiment, which will be so fun to watch. I love Bagley and I love Wendell Carter. They're going to be a force down low, but I just don't love the depth. They're so young. They don't have a ton of experience other than Grayson Allen or leadership for that matter. So I think they're a team that might take some lumps. There are some road games that they just don't really show up. They don't show up for. They don't handle the environment real well. So not to say that Duke won't be a very good team. I think they'll still be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 team. But I think they're the more likely of the two because I really love this Michigan State team, and I think their floor is a lot higher than this Duke team.
Yeah, me too. I don't see many holes with this Michigan State club, and I pretty much agree with you on Duke. I mean, there's 3 things that I've marked down for Duke this whole offseason is leadership, depth, and point guard play behind Duval. I mean, those are major concerns. As talented as they are, and they have Coach K, obviously, that can fix things, but those are major issues. And I don't think people are necessarily they're just kind of overlooking all the problems and saying, well, this team has so much talent, so they'll be fine. But we've seen these teams as talented as Duke struggle before. So it's definitely a possibility.
And I think we talk about even like the Kentucky team that was 10 deep and went all the way to the national championship game undefeated. That team still ran offense. Like this team looks to me like a team that's going to run a lot of like ISO looks and just like simple screen and roll and like a very much NBA style offense. And that might work. But ISO ball doesn't necessarily work always in college basketball. And I think Duke's going to have to find a way to really run some offense. Trayvon Duval, I know, has a reputation of being more of a scoring point guard. But he's going to have to be a guy who runs the show. I mean, Grayson Allen and Gary Trent are going to be on the wings who can score, and then Bagley and Carter. I think they can do some interesting things out of the high post with Bagley, kind of do it because of his athleticism and his skill set. But I think they are going to have to run some real offense, and that's one of my concerns as well, is just having some offensive flow and not just saying we're gonna run and press and ISO and try to score, just play pick and roll basketball.
Yeah, I remember you saying during the ACC podcast that you like their pieces, but you're not necessarily sure if they go together.
Exactly.
Right. And another thing that's a little concerning to me, and I think we've talked about it before, is Grayson Allen willing to give up shots for these other newcomers? I mean, that's a major question in the back of my head.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one where I'm sitting there like, I mean, somebody said, "Oh, Grayson Allen will lead the country in scoring." Is that a good thing? I would almost be lower on this Duke team. I think it was Fran Fraschilla who tweeted that. I'd be lower on this Duke team if you told me that Grayson Allen led the country in scoring, because that means he's chucking 23 shots a game, and this offense has no flow.
There's too many options and talented kids on this team for him to lead the country in scoring. I just don't even see if that being possible. And I agree, if he is leading the country in scoring, that's not a good thing. So that was a little funky take from Fran.
What a guy.
All right, so let's move on here. So this question kind of goes with Joe's. Drew the Dude 11 wanted to know, who's your possibly biggest letdown team this year? Is it Duke?
Ooh, that is a tough one. Biggest letdown team. I'm gonna say Cincinnati. In terms of, I think they'll still be a top 25 team. So maybe then it's probably a top 20 team. But I think there's been a lot of like push towards, this is a top 8 team in the country, top 10 team in the country. And I'm just not sure I see it. I think the talent, the pieces are there, but I don't think they have an elite coach. I think Mick Cronin's a good coach, but I don't think he's an elite coach. I don't think I like Kane Broom, but I mean, their offense is going to take a significantly different look than what they were doing under Troy Copain, who's more of a big guard, who's going to take things slow, make the right pass. I think Kane Broom is more of a dynamic open court playmaker. So I think they're going to be a really good team still, but I don't think they're necessarily quite to those expectations. It's tough because I don't think like a Duke, for instance, is going to disappoint in the sense of falling out of the top 15. I mean, they might fall into like the 8 to 12 range, but they're still going to be really good. I'd love to know your thoughts. I mean, it's kind of an interesting question, tough one to say at this point.
No, I think they are a top 15 team. I think this is maybe the best offensive team Mick Cronin's ever had. And they're always going to play lockdown defense. I'm a little concerned, as you said, about point guard play. Kane Broom, is he a natural point guard in your opinion? I mean, he's pretty much a scorer, correct? Yeah, I'm a major expert.
I think he's more of a combo guard. The problem is it's really tough to take stats from the NEC and translate them to what they're going to do at the Power 5 level, especially or the high major level, especially when you weren't even on a good NEC team. I mean, Kane Broom was the scorer, the playmaker. He was everything for that ball club. So obviously he was going to turn over the ball because he had the ball in his hands all the time. His usage rate was off the charts. To me, he is a combo guard. So he is capable of running the show. I think they're going to have some time where they don't want to play Justin Jennifer and just let him run the show in a more slow down, more typical Cincinnati offense. But I like Kane Broom. I don't think he's a bad player by any means, but I'm just really interested to see how that comes together.
Right. I would probably say right now they're a second weekend team, Sweet 16 with the possibility of making a deeper run. But I could see the letdown for sure.
But remember, Cincinnati won by 28 against the D2 team. Last year, they only won by 7. So they're obviously an outstanding team, according to college basketball expert John Rothstein.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I saw that tweet that you put up. And that was pretty hilarious. It
was ridiculous.
How do you compare exhibition game scores
from last year? Both teams are different teams. Year. Like, this D2 powerhouse, it took them by 7 points. Well, maybe it's one game. You can't compare one game from year to year, let alone an exhibition game.
We don't know what if Mick Cronin was using certain rotate matchups and trying things out too that aren't working. He's trying to use it in the scrimmage to see if it works in a real game too. So
like the point he made, Mick Cronin, this might be Mick Cronin's best team yet, is certainly valid and it's probably true. But I mean, like, are you kidding me? Like, oh well, they won by a lot over a Division II team, and they didn't win by a lot last year. So, I mean, take it away, guys. They're the best team in the country.
Oh man, so my team is Seton Hall. I know I'm not as high on Seton Hall as some others. Like I said, I think they're an NCAA tournament team. I would probably put them in that 20 to 25 range going into the season. But I've seen them as high as 12th in some rankings. I know Brad Calavaro from Busting Brackets has them 9th in the country. They pretty much have been the same team the last 2 years. They're an outside the top 25 team. That's done well, and they've been competitive, but they just don't do anything well other than rebound. So if they can get other contributions from somebody other than the top 3 guys, and I feel a lot better about this team. But as good as those top 3 guys are, Rodriguez, Delgado, and Carrington, they can't win every game for them every night. So somebody else needs to step up. Is it Miles Powell? Is it Miles Kale? I mean, I'm not sure yet. Michael Nezzi. I mean, they have some solid pieces around those guys, but they need to be consistent and, contribute more. What do you think about Seton Hall?
Yeah, I mean, I like Seton Hall to a certain extent. I think your concerns are very valid. I mean, if we look at Seton Hall, other than one weekend in which Isaiah Whitehead was outstanding and they won the Big East tournament, when have they been great? Like, I haven't seen it. I mean, if Kadeem Carrington goes out there and is a legitimate point guard for them and plays that position well, I think that increases their upside exponentially. We love those 3 pieces. I think Miles Powell's a guy who's going to space the floor and hit some shots for you. Miles Kale, as you mentioned. I like I can't spell his name. I can't say his name, but Sandro, the freshman stretch 4. I think he gives them an interesting look in terms of a floor spacer next to Delgado. I'd say they're like more of a 15 to 20 range team for me. I think they're going to win. I mean, last year they did lose a ton of close games, and when you improve at point guard, which hopefully Kadeem Carrington can do that for them, then you can improve in that range into that 10 to 15 range. So, I mean, we'll see. I think they're definitely a wait and see team for me, which is kind of odd given how much of a veteran team they are. But I mean, yeah, there are definitely some people out there who are super bullish on Seton Hall, and I'm not quite there yet.
Older doesn't always mean better. I mean, experience is great, but they were just kind of a bubble team the last 2 years, or a little bit maybe better than that. But it's just, I don't know. If you look at their stats, and I've said this before, they don't do anything well, Kevin. They are literally mediocre or bad or poor at everything. Field goal percentage.
Except for, yeah.
I mean, everything.
They pound people on the glass, and
they
make plays late because they have 2 good guards, and they win enough ball games to get to the end.
They're one of the worst free throw shooting teams in college basketball. They're one of the worst perimeter shooting teams in college basketball. I mean, it's just, I don't see anything great that they do. So they need more. So we'll see.
Right.
From Seton Hall. Again, I think they're a tournament team, but I'm just not ready to go there yet. All right, so a couple more questions here before we finish up. Brad Calavaro, who I mentioned earlier, he wants to know, can you explain how Florida is a top 10 team? I don't see the logic. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there, Brad. I know a lot of people have pretty much penciled them in as the easy number 2 in the SEC, and I'm not necessarily sure I'm there. I mean, sure, Kevon Allen's excellent, and they're going to be excellent perimeter defensively because, I mean, Chris Chioza is another guy we could have talked about for our all-defensive team. But Chris Chioza, I think some people are talking about him like he's a Bob Cousy Award candidate. I mean, the guy played 20 minutes a game last year, scored 7 points, 4 assists, shot the ball okay, played good defense. I mean, he's a good player, but they don't have anything behind him at point guard. And so that's a concern right off the bat. Their front court depth is a concern for me, especially with Johnny Bunu not going to be back until, I believe, January. And then even then, guys coming off ACL, their first few weeks, first few months are not always very good. So those are some concern for me as well. I love the scoring potential they have. Igor Kulichov comes in, who's a guy who spaces the floor really well at 6'5", 6'6", fights on the glass. So he's kind of a useful player. They bring in Jalen Hudson as well from Virginia Tech. I'm not really sure. I think the logic is more just that they bring back players from a good team, and Mike White's a really good coach, and we're just going to roll with it there because we kind of know what they are. I think we know what Florida is, and some voters and some people who make their polls just like knowing a team, and I think we know what Florida is at this point. And I don't necessarily think what we know is a top 10 team, but some people do.
I think honestly, Mike White has something to do with it because I think you're already seeing people take notice with the job he's done since taking over. I mean, taking over for Billy Donovan was one of the hardest jobs in college basketball, and he's done a tremendous job. Taking that team to the Elite Eight last year. I think they have an elite guard in Kevon Allen. I think Chris Gio's is a little bit better than you might think. I know he didn't play a ton of minutes last year, but he's definitely going to see a bigger role. They're more explosive offensively, I'll say that. You bring in Jalen Hudson, who I think will be a good bench guy for them, who can come in and give them offense. Kulichov's an 18-9 guy. I don't know if he'll necessarily put up those numbers, but he's a really talented kid. And come back till January, but they still have Kavarius Hayes and Keith Stone up front. I think two guys that can maybe carry the load until he comes back. I think Hayes is definitely a guy that could, possibly be a breakout guy this year. So I see them in probably that 10 to 15 range, but a little bit higher than possibly you and Brad on Florida.
Yeah, I'd say like the 13 to 16 is where I would see them preseason in terms of. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of teams that could be better than them. In like a preseason poll, it's kind of hard to say like, oh, let's put this team because we don't know if they'll be better than Florida. So Florida kind of rises naturally a few spots. But like overall, if I were to say like down the line, like I don't think like if you were to say, will they be the like a top 10 team in college basketball? I don't think we will be saying that by the end of the year. I mean, I think you're right. Like Chios is a really good player. Maybe I came off incorrectly there, but I don't think he's like I don't think he's like a first team all SEC or a second team all SEC guy. I think some Florida fans, maybe it's just a certain Jason Kessler was mentioning it. But I think Florida's going to be really good. I think, as you mentioned, Mike White's a great coach, and we both discussed it. But I just don't necessarily love like the top 10 hype that some people have thrown on them. So
I think Kevon Allen, though, kind of showed last year late, especially in the tournament, what type of player he can be. Mm-hmm. I think he could possibly win the SEC Player of the Year. I think he's that good.
Absolutely, yeah. Kevon Allen's a really, really, really good player. Can score the basketball, can defends really well. I don't necessarily think he'll win the Player of the Year award because I think Michael Porter is going to go crazy scoring wise, and I think Robert Williams is going to go crazy block wise and like rebound wise. So, but yeah, absolutely, he's a great player, and like they're a great team. They're going to be an NCAA tournament team, a second weekend team probably. But I mean, yeah, top 10 is pushing it for me. I don't think it's unreasonable by any means, though.
All right, two more questions, and then we'll get out of here, Kevin. Official Reut wants to know about the Ivy League this year, and also what's your thoughts on Cornell?
I'm really excited about the Ivy League. Starting, at the top, I think Princeton's a really good team that people are forgetting about. I don't think they're going to win the league, but they have the guy in Miles Stevens, who is one of the more underrated players in the country, averaged like 16 and 5 in conference play last season at ridiculous efficiency. And then they also have a couple. Devin Kennedy coming back, kind of a fearless playmaker. He's going to take shots late in games when they need them. And obviously Yale is my pick. I've discussed that, but that's going to be really fun. I think Jordan Brunner blocks a lot of shots for them as a breakout guy to bring along with Makai Mason coming back from the injury. Mie Oni is an NBA potential prospect at 6'6" with his ability to shoot three. And then Harvard, super young last season. 4 freshmen basically starting, and they went to be right all the way to the end. A really talented team, and I think they're going to be a team that's going to be right there in the Ivy League. So that's going to be a really fun league. In terms of Cornell in particular, I think this is a really, really big year for the Cornell program. Year 2 of the Brian Earl era as a new head coach. They have Matt Morgan, who's an outstanding scorer. Stone Gettings had a really nice year last year as a stretch forward who passes the ball pretty well. They definitely have some work to do. They bring in Jim Boeheim's son, Jimmy. He wasn't that great a prospect by any means, but 6'7" kid can shoot the three a little bit. So I think this is the year. I mean, they bring in their new guys. After that top three in the Ivy League, I actually think it's pretty wide open. I like Penn at number 4, but then that 5 through 8 range, there's a lot of teams, a lot of question marks. So I could see them working their way into that 5 to 6 range, and then being dangerous enough to try to sneak into the top 4 and get to that Ivy League tournament.
Yeah, I feel like the top of the league is really strong. Harvard, Yale, and Princeton are all very quality clubs and probably could win the league, all 3 of them. I wanted to ask you about Penn real quick, though. They were a pretty young team last year that seemed to come on it late. What do you think about this Penn team?
Well, you really have to love AJ Berger. 13-7, I think, as a freshman, blocked 2 shots a game as well. They were young. They did come on late. I've actually seen some projections that suggest how good the Ivy League is that by putting the conference tournament on Penn's home floor, they actually have the highest percentage of winning the Ivy League tournament as the 4 seed. They would be like at 26%. And then like Princeton, Harvard, and Yale would each be in that like 23.5 range. It was actually, I think it was Bart Torvik who does really good work statistically. But like that, I think Penn is a team that is getting forgotten about to a certain extent with the talent they do have. And Steve Donahue does kind of have to do it this year. I mean, this is a program that needs to win in the Ivy League with the Palestra, with the indoor practice facility that they do have, with their commitment to basketball. So I think he does need to make the next step, win a conference tournament game this year, and get to that Ivy League final.
All right. And he wants also to know about UConn. Now, UConn, again, it's a team with talent. I mean, I like their top 4, Jalen Adams, Terry Larry, or Al Gilbert, Chris Fatale. I think those kids are really talented. I think Antoine Anderson's a kid from Fordham that'll help. But, it's, again, we always go back to that front court. We don't know what they're going to get from that. And, do they have enough outside of those 4 or 5 guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question we're seeing. Providence, they play Providence in an exhibition, did not look very good from the time that I did watch. Obviously, it's 1 game, so we shouldn't take too much away. But I think the other thing we're just going to run to is, does their offense flow? I mean, their offense just did not look good in that ball game. I think they need to do a little more of getting Terry Larrier in the high post, because I don't think you're going to be able to space it out with 4 guards and have Eric Cobb be in the post and just try to like attack. I don't think that's necessarily a strategy that's going to work too well. I think that's on Jalen Adams though, as a leader, as a point guard, to trying to get this team together. I think they have NCAA tournament talent, but I wouldn't be ready to say they're an NCAA tournament team yet. Interesting team to watch for sure. Looking forward to seeing them early in the year.
Right. I think they're an NCAA tournament team too, but, if you ask me right now, Wichita State, Cincinnati, even SMU, I like those teams better. And I probably put them in that 5 or 6 spot in the AAC. Is that where you have them?
Yep. I think I have them 6th. I'm interested to see how UCF looks. I was super high on Aubrey Dawkins, and he gets bounced. That was crushing for sure.
I wanted to ask you about that. How much of a blow is that? Do you knock them down a spot, just from that loss, or how do you think they handle the loss of Dawkins?
I would probably knock them down a spot or 2, to the 4 or 5. I had them 3rd actually, because I was a little higher on them than most, because I was a little higher on Dawkins than most. And so that's kind of a disappointment for them for sure. I still think they're probably an NCAA tournament team. They do have some pieces coming in still. Dayon Griffin from Louisiana Tech, who shoots the 3. Terrell Allen from Drexel, who's kind of a scoring guard at 6 feet tall. You can come off the bench. So they have some pieces for sure. But I don't necessarily. I loved what Dawkins. I thought Dawkins would be like a 13 points per game. Had 40% from 3. Defends really well. So I thought that was a pretty big blow. And it was so weird. Like they just kind of like tweeted it out from their like UCF Twitter page. Like, yeah, I'm out for the. He was like, yeah, I'm out for the year. I'm sorry. And I was like, oh, well, all right then.
Yeah, you mentioned Dayon Griffin. I think his role becomes even more important now with Dawkins not in the mix. I tweeted that out the other day. So we'll see what happens. Last question here is from UConn Mania. He wants to know it's kind of a tricky question, but who's the better of the new Big East or the old Big East? Nova, Xavier, Seton
Mhm.
Hall, or kind of that new AAC with Wichita State, Cincinnati, UConn, and those teams.
Right. Like if you're gonna include the old Big East in terms of like Syracuse and Pitt and all of them, then the old Big East is still better. But I believe the question was not including those. It's more like the new AAC teams with Cincinnati and Central Florida and UConn. In which case, I do think it's the Big East, the new Big East. You have to love what Villanova's done. Jay Wright's done an outstanding job, especially since they've moved into that new conference. Xavier is a great program. Providence has done a really good job under Ed Cooley. So yeah, I would take that group.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think the AAC is obviously getting better. Wichita State, you added a Wichita State. Central Florida seems to be turning the corner. UConn hopefully getting better, but you still have to go with the Big East. I just think there's more question marks with the AAC at the top.
And then I had actually one question from my feed that didn't get in from a direct message, and that was about North Carolina and their point guard spot. And he wanted to know who was going to replace. Would it be Seventh Woods? Would it be Jalik Felton? And how would that offense look with around there? So, like, what's your thoughts there?
That's a good question. I really don't. I mean, does Berry do it? What do you think?
Obviously, like with Barry out, I think was the question more. I don't love
Barry out. I'm sorry.
Yeah. With Barry out,
that's.
I think it's Jalik Felton.
That's a tough one.
I mean, Seventh
I'd
Woods.
probably say so too.
Seventh Woods' claim to fame is a really massive dunk in his junior year of high school. Not that he's not a good player. Beyond that, I watched that dunk the other day and I was still amazed by it. But he's super athletic. But I think their offense would flow better with a guy like Felton who can score the basketball. I think they're going to be helped by having a guy like Pinson. I think actually Pinson might have the ball in his hands a little more and distribute a little more, especially if they do go with Felton.
Yeah, I think you'll probably see a mix of Felton and Pinson. How long is Berry out for? Do they have any timeline on when he's returning?
I think it was. I wanted to say it was like 6 to 8 weeks from when we heard. So maybe missing 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the season. Okay. I don't remember the exact timeline.
Yeah. I just think you'll probably see mixes of guys in the first few games to see what works, and then they'll go from there. But I would probably say Pinson and Felton are your top two guys to fill that role until Berry comes back. I think that's pretty simple.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so. All right, well, that wraps it up for today, guys. I really appreciate everybody listening. We'll definitely do this again. It was a lot of fun, so we'll do this as much as we can during the season. We'll be doing a weekly recap every Sunday once the season starts, so next Sunday will be the first one, not this coming Sunday, but the next. Also on Thursday, me and Kevin will be doing a mid-major preview to get you ready for the season. Also, I'm making my triumphant return to Periscope tonight. So hopefully everybody will watch that, 9 o'clock Eastern time. It's been way too long. I got to get back. People need me,
I'm excited to see it.
All right, Kevin. Thanks a lot for joining, and we'll talk to you later. Tony Patel's College Hoop News Podcast. Thanks.